Morning's papers. Let's start with the Daily Telegraph. This is the story that Charlie and I were talking about first thing this morning. Energy bills, wait for this, may rise again in nuclear power push. This is households. They could face higher energy bills to pay for nuclear reactors as the government puts the power source at the heart of its net zero plans. You might be wondering why they haven't actually mentioned this before. This is Ed Miliband, who is desperate to get to net zero by 2030. So essentially, we know that British companies pay the highest industrial electricity prices in the developed world. They are desperate to get to net zero. They keep telling us that we're going to pay less and less for our energy, but at the same time, we're seeing our energy bills increase. This is trying to get companies to build SMRs, small modular reactors, in this country, and many of the companies are saying, well, hang on a minute, we're happy to invest, but we need to have some sort of long-term plan. That's the front page of the Daily Telegraph. The other big item here, Prince of Wales is going to join Trump at the reopening of Notre Dame. I saw the pictures yesterday. It is looking resplendent. The Prince of Wales will today join Donald Trump at the official reopening of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris after being scrambled to attend in a last-minute diplomatic mission. What's going on there, Charlie? Last-minute diplomatic mission. Yes. Prince of Wales.
Yes.
Obviously not invited originally.
Well, there's always, I think, a bit of a wrangle over the guest list. I mean, I don't know why he wouldn't have been invited.
Well, you've got Trump there, Zelensky, you've got world leaders. Surely
you would have thought
there would be some sort of royal presence.
It was certainly for Anglo-Franco relations. You know, you would have thought
which are not great,
which are not always. But you would have thought, you know, that what better? I mean, the Prime Minister was in Paris not so long ago for celebrating armistice, or commemorating armistice, I should say. And so you would have thought that actually
Where is Starmer? Do we know where he is?
Well, it's a Saturday morning. I imagine he clocks off at 6 p.m. on a Friday.
Well, that's right. He's cooking fish fingers.
Yes.
Well, apparently, Keir Starmer has not met Trump since the election victory in the States. Again, this is crucial. Yes. And of course, you've got David Lammy, of course, calling Trump a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath. That's always helpful.
Yes, yes. And Starmer's tried to fudge the issue by his speech at the I think it was the Guildhall talking about foreign policy, to say that we're not going to choose between Europe and the US, but actually at times we might have to sort of, stand up to both of you. And it was a very sort of, well...
Okey-cokey,
yes, in, out. But no one's asked him to do any of that. I don't know why he said, we're not going to choose. Well, no one's asked you to choose, You're making up something that no one's asked you to do. Like, we can understand.
But isn't this part of him trying to say, I am a leader on the world stage, I will make these tough decisions, we don't need to choose? Well, actually, you're going to have to do some deals with Trump.
Yes.
The US is our most important strategic ally, whether you or David Lammy or Angela Rayner like it.
Oh, exactly. And that's why I think Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, is in the US at the minute. I think she's sort of pressing the flesh with other Republicans. So, whether that... I don't think that generated too many headlines in the paper.
Meanwhile, Trump will be in France saying it's the great cathedral, the greatest.
Yes,
it's the greatest.
Exactly.
Rachel Reeves, this is the front page of the Daily Mail. We can't boost UK defence without making cuts. Again, this is feeding into this line that Charlie was talking about, saying they're not going to come for us for more cash, but now they're going to have to make cuts to have defence to get to 2.5% of GDP. She says raising defence spending will mean squeezing other parts of government. They are going to have a spending review to drive up efficiency and slash waste. The Times this morning, we talked about this as well. MI5 shifts focus from terrorists to rogue states. MI5 has been forced to pare back its focus on counter-terrorism to deal with the growing threat posed by Russia and other hostile states. This is a really important story, actually. This is Ken McCallum, the Director General of MI5, said Britain was facing a generational challenge because, of course, we've got aggression from nation-states like Russia and China, and also the growing problem of terrorists being groomed in this country. I think we spoke about this, that we've got young people who are so disenfranchised, they are getting hold of information which is totally inappropriate and definitely radicalising them.
Absolutely, and it's it's only going to get worse. There are many, many more people out there that clearly want to do us this harm. And I was just reading, you know, the workings of MI5 are absolutely fantastic, where, you know, you have to keep secret your employee status. And as you were just talking about Mr. McCullen there, he kept his job within the MI5 secret from his family for 25 years until he announced to them.
I wonder what he said he did.
Well, yes, what would you say, you know, when you're leaving the house every morning, sort of putting on a suit and tie, or was he? Who knows? I mean, he was a spy. I mean, he only told his family when he became Director General. So, you know, it's a long time to sort of conceal something like that.
It is. I have some first-hand experience of this, where family members, no one was quite sure what the family member did, and then it transpired much later they were a spy. But I wonder whether that's a vestige of a different time as well, where you possibly weren't so open with your other half about everything that you did in your life, and that you did have this second life. I mean, I'd be rubbish as a spy. You'd be rubbish. You just tell everyone, I'm a spy.
Well, I spy with my... No, I think, you know, we'd be... I think, alternatively, we could be the perfect spies.
Or we could be the perfect spy.
Very
maybe we are.
Maybe we are.
Yeah, maybe we are. Let's move on to the eye this morning. This is the plan for change, this big reset from Labour. Very quietly, though. They keep telling us what they're going to do. Although, as Charlie said, what they promised before the election seems to be remarkably different to what they are now promising after the election. And this headline says, Labour drops NHS pledge to cut A&E waiting times to 4 hours. This is the commitment to treat 95% of A&E patients within 4 hours is abandoned. There's a reason for that, because the NHS is fundamentally broken. We are running at 95% capacity. I know, I've been there. If you can't get patients out of beds, you don't have beds, so therefore you can't admit from A&E. That means you get a backing up of ambulances on ramps, and you get these huge problems in A&E. Meanwhile, if the primary care is not open, GPs aren't open, people can't see a GP, so where do they go? A&E. Solve the puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. And the issue that we're also facing is that actually, my understanding is that the NHS is not actually necessarily treating more people. It is just maintained, obviously. I mean, obviously, there's been backlogs since COVID and all the rest of it, but it's received quite a significant amount more money. So one has to ask, where is that money going?
Middle management.
Well, yeah, quite right. And, you know, that needs to obviously change, because you actually need to see reforms in the NHS in order to make sure that actually the system is more streamlined, that you're recruiting more people, or the money's going into recruitment and training, so you can take the pressure off the current staff and treat people as quickly as you possibly can.
Well, also, do you remember in this Plan for Change launch, which we are calling a reset in the face of plummeting poll ratings, and that's my catchy phrase for this, in the NHS, they said, excuse me, they're going to target the 18-week wait. The aim is to get 92% of people seen within that 18 weeks. Currently, we're at 60%. This has not been achieved for 10 years. It's pie in the sky.
Well, it's certainly a target and it's an ambition, and one actually you would quite like him to have when it comes to immigration, because there was no target at all.
Very well said.
It's hard to say how you can have it for one particular sector or one particular part of the public realm and not another. But there you are.
It also feels very disingenuous. They say we're going to hire 13,000 new police officers. No, they're not. They're going to hire 3,000 police officers, and the rest are going to be made up of special constables, and they're going to be made up of PCSOs. It's time that politicians levelled with the public. Stop lying.
Well, and that, I think you are right there, because there's, you know, Boris Johnson, I think, can be proud. You know, your message earlier wanted to summon him to be Foreign Secretary again or something like that.
I think someone wanted him in a cabinet with me.
Oh, in a cabinet, yeah. Well, yes. Well, that would be a sight to see. But,
yes, wouldn't it just?
But, you know, Boris, I think, can take absolute credit for trying to recruit 20,000 more police officers. Now, obviously, the argument to that was that, well, you depleted them as a Tory government previously, but he did recruit 20,000 more police officers, where he fell short in terms of trying to spin numbers and saying we're having 40 new hospitals, which don't seem to have appeared, and might have just been refurbishments or, you know, slightly touched up older ones. So, you know, I think the public can see through that when you're saying these numbers, or when you're trying to put out a plan and have numbers attached to them. People can see through that kind of politics. But that's why I think Labour, clearly not having a plan in the first place, have come in, but also trying to throw out these figures left, right and centre, or try and appeal with all these sound bites and new plans plans and milestones and missions and goals and targets and
one a week.
And one a week, and the public are just, have got absolutely no idea what's going on. I don't blame them.
I don't think the government knows what's going on either. No. We're just going through the front pages this morning. Front page of The Guardian, rape trials collapse due to record court delays. The number of rape victims pulling out of prosecutions before trial has more than doubled in 5 years. Apparently this is due to massive delays in the court system, a crisis in courts. The Crown Court backlog predicted to hit 100,000 without radical action. 280 rape prosecutions have fallen through following the withdrawal of an alleged victim after the suspect has been charged. This is due to the court backlogs. The front page of the FT this morning. This is interesting. Romania polls scrapped after Russian claims. Russia meddling once again in elections, it seems. Romania's top court has cancelled tomorrow's presidential election following allegations that Russia used TikTok to promote the leading candidate. The decision to scrap the runoff vote and annul the first-round victory of the pro-Putin candidate, this is Georgescu, came after Romanian authorities published documents this week indicating Moscow sought to undermine the election. Front page of the Daily Express, the Mirror and the Sun are all the same. This is Kate Middleton. Princess Kate. Caring Kate, this is the front page of the Express, Caring Kate's message of Christmas hope. The Princess of Wales gave a heartwarming message of hope at her annual carol service. She looks great, actually. 1,600 guests yesterday. She told them, love is the light that can shine bright even in our darkest, I think it's hours, I'm going to need to turn the page, even in our darkest times. It was the future Queen's first leading role since her cancer treatment this year, with her husband and children by her side. Look, they look absolutely fantastic. The front page of the Mirror, Kate's Abbey Christmas. The Princess of Wales lit up Westminster Abbey as she returned to public life at a carol concert. And again, same message from The Sun, our sister publication. Kate lights up Christmas. The Princess of Wales smiles proudly last night as she hosted an extra poignant Christmas carol service. Obviously treated for cancer this year. She was joined by William and their children, George, Charlotte and Louis, for the annual event at Westminster Abbey. Now, if you want a pay rise, Charlie, this is the front page of the Star. The way to get a pay rise is not to work hard. Apparently, according to this. If you want to get on in your career, you are far more likely to get on and get a pay rise and a promotion if you suck up to your boss.
Yes.
Yes. I think we know this, don't we?
Do you know, I thought we did know this, because all too often you hear about people who have put in the hours and done the overtime and turn up early and leave late just because they're trying to make a good impression and obviously want to sort of, show that they could be promoted and show that they're hardworking and all this. They always get overlooked. Because it's, your boss's chums or someone who appears to be more in cahoots with the boss or sort of, more popular. It's true. This has been going on for years. I don't know why it's front page. It's only a revelation to the Star now.
Well, only the Star, absolutely. Apparently, brown-nosing beats working hard for a career, according to Melissa Stone. She is... who is Melissa Stone? She is a career coach. She says it's a myth working hard will land you a salary bump. You need to suck up and make your boss believe that you have a winning personality. I'll remember that later on. When I see the boss.
Exactly. But nobody likes... Everyone can spot someone in the office that's trying to get a bit too close to the bosses just for promote.
I can see them all through the glasses. Right, let's move on to some of your stories now. I mentioned this earlier. Sadiq Khan, not the most popular person in London.
No, far from it. And rumours, if they're to be believed, in the New Year's Honours list, which is obviously presented by to His Majesty the King by the Prime Minister, it apparently has Sadiq Khan's name on it to receive a knighthood. And
what is the knighthood for? Destroying London?
Well, that is what is causing such division. Nobody can not put their finger on it. No one can find anything to suggest why this man deserves such a gong. A man that's presided over increases in knife crime and violent crime in the city, that's brought traffic to a standstill through the expansion and the introduction of ULEZ, something that was hated and rejected in certain parts of London.
And 20-mile-an-hour limits.
20-mile-an-hour limits, where you're seeing he's all been for reducing air quality emissions by obviously slapping on the UNES when air quality has gone down in the tube network, where you can't get a train, where you can't get a bus, where our...
but listen, he rebranded all the overground lines to Weaver and Suffragette. That cost $6 million.
And does anybody know what line that all...
Haven't a clue.
And all the while, you're right, trying to beef up his comms team in City Hall that cost an arm and a leg, rather than actually delivering more police on the streets and actually cutting crime and things that actually matter to people, and just going cap in hand to the government, as it was in the time, the Conservative government, asking for more because everything was to blame by them. This man has made a success of being a failure, even though he's been elected, what, 3 times now, is it? I know. I mean, most people would have that reaction too. They kick the bucket.
Yeah.
And, but as somebody very kindly put it, I think, or rightly put it, it's not Sadiq Khan that needs a gong, it's everyone else, it's Londoners that need a gong for having him put up with him.
Right, let's move on. Politics is in as something of a state of flux.
It is.
Yes.
Yes.
You've got to double. That was a line in. This is a line into the Times article that you chose.
It is, and there's a nice double-page spread not too far into the Times newspaper on pages 8 and 9, where there are some pictures of. Do you know this man? His name is Nigel Farage. Have you heard of him? You've met him once or twice. Well, there is a huge question, and it's on within the double-page spread of the Times. Can reform win the next election? Labour is nervous. Now, I don't think people will laugh at that statement.
Not anymore.
They might have done a few years ago. If we're just trying to take that question on head on, I think it's going to be very difficult for Reform to win the next election.
Why?
I think they will do a lot better than what they're doing now. In terms of, they've got 5 seats in terms of Parliament.
Why can't they win?
Because I think there will be the return of Conservative voters to the Conservative Party. I think there will just be those...
No, because there is no Conservative Party.
Well,
it is moribund. It is no more.
Well,
we are burying it.
The turnout in the election was low, and Labour were able to get in and have this supermajority there because there was a split vote for those that actually did turn out to vote for the Conservatives and those that voted Reform.
Andrea Jenkins said the Conservative Party is no more as she joined Reform. Tim Montgomery has joined Reform. And Nigel Farage has made this very clear that the Conservative Party is now splitting, I would say, into pragmatic, good Conservatives like yourself who should join Reform, and those people who are wet Liberals who need to join the Liberals.
And look, there is no denying the fact that there is momentum with Reform. Because of the failures of successive governments, Tory and Labour, to not tackle the big issues of the day, and not to get a grip with the issues that matter to people the most. And I think it is refreshing when you see somebody talking plain speak to the public. They like what Nigel has to say. My only worry, as I say, why I don't think they can win the election is unless there are some pacts, unless you can actually say to people in particular seats, unless there is a unified...
We tried that, remember? Reform stood down for the Conservatives. They messed that up.
And unless you unite the right, I think we might see a similar situation where, it could be you vote Reform, you get Labour, or if you vote Tory, you get Labour and not a Reform candidate. So I think there has to be a lot of work done in order to see perhaps that Reform win a reality. But
I am looking at you very quizzically indeed. Good to see you. Mullets, we were talking about this earlier. I do think the mullet is a particularly unpleasant hairstyle.
Yes, it's not something I particularly sort of, look at and think, oh, yes.
It would destroy your boyish good looks.
Well, yes. I mean, I like to keep everything in nice and tidy, but yes. I can't see the appeal myself.
Right.
I think there's a reason why it was popular in the 80s, and it should probably remain popular in the 80s.
Yes. Although it is in Australia, and I was talking to a friend of mine, Steve Milne, who will be here tomorrow, actually, talking about Australian culture, if there is such a thing, and fashion, if there is such a thing. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Let's just look at the front pages this morning once again. All these stories are kind of linked if you are just waking up. So the front page of the Daily Telegraph, energy bills may rise in the nuclear power push. So this is Ed Miliband saying that, oh, look, we've got an energy gap, and that we were going... Actually, we were nearly plunged into total darkness in the last week because there is a massive energy gap. Whether they like this or not, having the odd windmill floating around the United Kingdom and then, having a solar panel isn't going to solve our energy crisis. Meanwhile, they may have noticed that the quest for IT and data banks uses huge amounts of power, so we need some more electricity to be made. Now, nuclear power, I've long been a fan of nuclear power, but essentially the front page of the Telegraph is that we need to have private investment, and so therefore, as a result of that, we're going to see more money going on our electricity bills to pay for the nuclear power, which they should have done a long time ago anyway. The front page of the Daily Mail, Rachel Reeves says we can't boost UK defence without making cuts. This is the woman who found a 20 billion hole and then has managed to get tax rises to make another 40 billion. So she has some dubious accounting qualifications as well. And then the front page of the Eye this morning, Labour drops NHS pledge to cut A&E waiting times to 4 hours. So I don't see a coherent message. This is at the same time that we have this plan for change from the Labour government.
Yes, absolutely right. And it goes back to another front page, which is about security. And it's all very well having to use energy, particularly nuclear, to support our systems, whether it's the NHS sort of, IT systems, whether it's national infrastructure, whether it's national grid, whether it's any kind of security systems. If it's going to be hacked because you haven't got the spending, you haven't supported our defence systems, then, of course, that's going to cripple the nation even more and hit the pound in the pocket of hard-working people.
And there is and plan for change. It's just, I've just heard so much nonsense coming down from the government. How much of this was a mad scramble? I mean, it does feel to me that they know they're in trouble. His popularity ratings have never, of any Prime Minister, have never fallen so fast. You've got Reeves sticking her feet in, saying, well, I'm absolutely not going to change anything I've done, even though they know that, I think they know, they have made a huge mess of this. This is, in my mind, no doubt a reset. They are trying to gain their ground here. It's not working.
I think that's absolutely right. And there's a telling point, because there's a man in the government called Pat McFadden.
Oh, yes.
Who is effectively the Deputy Prime Minister. I know Angela Rayner holds the title, and I'm sure she's very good at making decisions alongside Sir Keir Starmer when he allows her to do that. But there is a chap called Pat McFadden who is the Minister for the Cabinet Office, and he's sitting on all of the decision-making bodies. So he sits basically right across government in the Cabinet Office.
Is that what that funny title means?
Yes. So Minister and Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, you might have heard. And
wasn't Gove that?
He was.
Yes.
That's why I know a little bit about this.
Because you were Gove's spat.
I was there also, and you can you basically hone into every department where there are problems. Now, he was sitting across all these different policy boards, so, bringing together different groups of people. So if there was youth crime, you would bring in the Home Office.
Shouldn't we rename it so it should be called sort of Head of Policy?
Head of Policy, yes, something like that, yes, yeah, which makes it more plain speak.
Well, it's
for
more
people
transparent.
Exactly. But he was sitting across all these, so if it was youth crime, for example, you bring in the Home Office and the Education and others. But he was sitting across all, and he was tearing, I mean, he hasn't got much hair to begin with, but he was tearing his hair out because no department had a coherent plan. So they've had to have all these different resets, come up with all these different missions and timelines and goals and
as we heard, pillars and
exactly. So it is panic stations, because he's obviously gone to the Prime Minister and said, look, nothing adds up here. So we've got to try and reset that now and say, right, now I've pulled all these strands together, supposedly. Here's a bit of a strategy. Now we need to do the relaunch. Here's the speech. And by the way, let's not talk about immigration. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And of course, this relaunch was at Pinewood Studios, the home of the Carry On film. How apt. What's this Carry On Labour government? Well, that was not lost on me.
Well, we just hope they don't carry on. I mean, that's
like
this for the sake of the country.
So there's a brilliant sketch that was written in the Telegraph, and essentially they said the format for these moments is the same. You get one of the cabinet who's still speaking to the Prime Minister, come and slag off the Tories. Then you get someone wheeled out a moaning head to say things are terrible, and then you get the Prime Minister to come in and read from an autocue about some dull policies that he believes will actually fix the country. He has no drive, no vision, no optimism. He is dull as ditch water. He doesn't take the country with you in any sense. But the devil is in the detail here. So when you listen to that speech, you think, well, I'm all right, okay, I'll give you, I'll certainly listen to it. But when you look at the energy policy, their flagship policy, they have watered this down, because they are now saying not 100% of energy to be net zero by 2030. It's now 95%. So therefore, they're giving themselves some leeway because they know it's not achievable. The economy to be the highest growth in the G7, no longer there. That's now an aim, not an ambition. So again, that's been watered down. And the big one for me, which you rightly say, is immigration.
Exactly. And this is where, Sir Keir Starmer, every day we see it now. I'm sure he is an intelligent man. I mean, he was the director...
Well, he must be.
He was the director. Did you know he used to be the former director of public prosecutions? Yeah. Did you know that?
No.
But I think what he does is, because he's not a politician and he's clearly not a strategist, but he obviously takes all of these decisions one at a time, in turn, as they cross his desk, as someone being a judge about something. So it is perfectly legitimate, to say, for example, there might be some well-off pensioners out there that don't need the winter fuel allowance, so let's tackle that. So you can have that argument, and it can be quite an open affair, because there'll be lots of pensioners that do actually say, I don't actually really need it, but I don't know what to do with it. And the government, so you can have a discussion about that, and he's obviously decided that on its own, but without any kind of idea about how it's going to impact on people. He's just making that decision and passing it back to the department to say, OK, that's the decision. Yes, we can cut winter fuel, but you go away and deal with it. He's just making decisions in a legalistic, I think, way, rather than having any kind of political antenna.
I've never heard anyone say that, and you're right. On their own, you can understand how those decisions were made. Do you think it's the first time he realises it doesn't add up? Is when he reads it in the newspaper, when he says, you're making pensioners poorer and they'll die. We'll then increase employers' national insurance so no one will invest. We'll put inheritance tax on farmers so there'll be no food. We'll add VAT to private schools, so we've got thousands of kids now going into the state system, where, by the way, there aren't any places anyway. And then when you look at what the businesses are saying, 54% of businesses expect to raise prices, cut jobs. The CBI has downgraded its growth forecast, blaming the budget for harming investment. And business leaders fear that Britain will become increasingly uncompetitive because of new workers' rights and trade union powers. Do you think it's only when it's presented on an A4 sheet of paper like that, he realises, it doesn't actually look that great?
And I don't think anybody's actually done that. But not that anybody should have to do it. You should be the Prime Minister, say, waking up to these headlines and thinking, my God, actually, maybe we've made a mistake, or maybe I need to sort of change that, change tack here, or change that tax, or say to the Chancellor, no, OK, we're not going ahead with that anymore because it looks terrible and we shouldn't be doing it. OK. But, there is a fundamental, I think, mismatch between him and just clearly what's going on in the country.
Well, and also, I got some sort of humour derived from this, but at the same time, when you are making pensioners poorer and colder, and we're going into a harsh winter and it's already cold and people are struggling, we've heard from people who are not putting the heating on, and then you see the problems that the businesses have got and employers' national insurance, all the rest of it. Meanwhile, the big story is we're going to ban porridge adverts. So I understand what they're trying to do, which is they're going to cut down on high sugar, high fat foods, but it just reads so badly. Certain types of porridge, crumpets, breakfast cereals on the list of products falling under a new junk food advertising ban. I'll tell you what, in the real world, where you don't have much time, then getting children to eat porridge at all would be remarkable. But also, people are struggling. So I'd rather people ate some porridge, and actually, a bit of sugar isn't going to kill you. It's about having balanced diets. But it's this smorgasbord. When you put it all together, it looks dreadful.
Yes, yeah, I think that's right. And I think it just goes back to the point that he's just clearly not a politician, someone that's not in touch, I think, and understanding of all of these things, what matters to people most.
Now, you mentioned Reform UK earlier, by the way. Lots of messages coming in about that. Carolina in Bath, good morning. She always watches.
Oh, good morning, Carolina.
Apparently, good morning. I always watch. I lovely watching you. Thank you. Good morning, David. Please tell Charlie, I, amongst others, will not be voting Tory at the next general election or the local elections, having voted Reform at the last general election. Charlie, you're deluded. The Tories have had enough chances and long enough. They're not just toast, they're burnt toast. And Kemi needs to up her game. That's what Carolina is saying there. David says, Jackie, Charlie is in denial about reform. He doesn't understand the enormity of this grassroots movement. I do think that's right. And the momentum it's gathering. I'm 58. I've never witnessed a political earthquake happening in front of my eyes with such energy and change. I said this to you. Richard Tice and I were in my kitchen when we kept this party going. And we have seen, going from literally us discussing this over tea and crumpets, which are now banned, to 100,000 members. And so now with Zia Youssef, there's the branch structure going in. And this is why I was saying that I just don't think you can look into a crystal ball and see what's going to happen. Now, Reform UK, this is the latest opinion poll, has overtaken Labour in a national opinion poll for the first time. Starmer's party is now in third place. So you've now got Labour 23, you've got Reform 24, Tories 26. If you'd have told me a year ago Reform would be polling at that, I would have been, you could have knocked me over with a feather.
And I'm not disputing it. And I want people, and Caroline, I absolutely understand and feel the momentum that is growing around Reform, and I can see all the positivity and why there is, and I can understand totally the failures of the past, why people are so fed up, and why they're going to a party where there are people, good people, who speak the truth, who say it as it is, and can actually connect with the public, where you've got such a Prime Minister that can't do that. The reason why I'm just, without sounding too boring about it, is when you're looking at by-election results within council seats at the minute, and I know I sound like I need to get a life, and I don't
really
do that.
Do need to get a life.
But you're seeing Conservatives take back a number of seats from Labour councils. So there is clearly there are clearly former Tory voters that didn't vote Tory at the last election that are prepared, I think, to come out and vote Tory again, and will do at the council elections, which is why I'm slightly... What I would want to see is obviously, uniting the right in order to get rid of Labour. And I fear if that doesn't happen in some shape or form, or unless, Reform really do keep on going, and as you say, people like Andrew Jenkins and Tim Montgomery and, other people sort of, who are good Tories and speak the truth and also get behind Reform, then I still think there'll be this deadlock or this gridlock where you end up having maybe a three-party system, but voting for one party where you are more aligned with the Conservatives, and I think Conservatives are more aligned with Reform than Labour, but you might run the risk of allowing a third party in through the back door, or allowing Labour back in again. So I just that's the only reason why I'm not deluded, Carolina, I'm not deluded, but I'm just looking at those council by-elections at the minute, and I am seeing a trend where Conservative voters that were shy at the last election are demonstrating that they're prepared to vote Conservative against, but whether they could... But this is local councils. When it comes to a general election, it might be the case that you're happy to vote Tory at local, but I'm voting Reform at the general. Who knows? That might be what...
I just wonder who you're convincing. I think yourself.
Well, hopefully Caroline.
Oh, I see where you're going with that.